and she's never forgiven me because all the symptoms came right back. And I think it is an area where learning the guidance around heart disease feels easier than learning the guidance around this sort of thing. And I don't know why. I don't know if that's our own biases and how our background, or whether we're just not interested,
Yeah, I think it's because we've been scared away from it, actually. And if you're scared in medicine, you sort of think, well, let's just say no, and it doesn't really matter because it's only the menopause. And I think also people have thought about menopause as something that causes symptoms. And if you look back when I didn't, of course, but when the hormones were found, when insulin was discovered, if you like, people called the disease diabetes. Of course, it is a disease. Thyroxine, hypothyroidism. Estrogen, when they discovered estrogen, it was hot flushes. It was never a disease. Whereas if then they said, well, the menopause is a disease, because should be thought of as a disease. If you think hypertension is a disease, is obesity a disease? We don't know, but it increases risk of so many diseases. And it's the same with the menopause, but no one thinks about it. So they think, well, if a woman doesn't have a hot flash, then does it matter? And in fact, I had a very awkward conversation recently with a gynecologist who wants to report me to the GMC because how dare I prescribe HRT in someone who's 60 without doing her estrogen level, because how do I know it's low? It just doesn't make sense. So I had to justify myself to him like a naughty school child. And he was saying, well, she didn't even have any hot flushes. So why would you give it? I said, I'm just looking at the clinic letter because she was seen by another doctor and she's got low mood, memory problems, she's feeling very tired, she's got muscle joint pains and headaches, and they all improved when she was given estrogen, so I'm sure they were related to her estrogen deficiency. He really didn't like that, and I think it's because people have thought menopause equals hot flushes and that's it. And I think also it's been made very complicated. I mean, I can't keep up with all the different combined oral contraceptive pills because they keep changing their names. You look in the BNF and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, which progestogen, which dose, and I think with HRT, if you look in the BNF, there's all these synthetic hormones, and I don't know half of them what they contain, and that's why I wrote this easy HRT prescribing guide. And if you prescribe body identical hormones that are available on the NHS, you keep it really easy, then it makes it very simple in the way that endocrinology should be, and then you can tailor it to the patients. And once you start doing it, it is, as I've said, transformational. Not only do women come back and say, thank you, my life's come back, I can keep my job, I can function as a person, but actually more importantly, I'm sitting there thinking, wow, do you know what, I've given them something and it reduces their risk of heart disease, osteoporosis, diabetes, dementia and early death. I can't think of any other treatment in medicine that does that. It's really quite incredible.
You're right about too much choice, Louise. So I would give you the analogy of inhalers. GPs, likewise with asthma, they're almost like afraid of it because there are so many different combinations. So I think you're right about that for sure. I must just say one more thing before I forget. Otherwise, Cara, who works with me, who's one of the prescription clerks, will tell me off for not mentioning this, because she once brought a letter to me and she said to me, Steve, look at this letter. And it was from a gynecologist, and she was describing this lady who was in the perimenopausal, and she used this word that I had never seen before, and the lady used it herself to describe her mood with her husband and her children, and the word was verminous. And I was like, oh my word, I've never heard of that word. I mean, obviously I worked out that it was vermin, but that's how she described her mood, and that was in the letter. And Cara said to me, have you ever heard of that? I said, no, but I think I can gather how she felt and how the others around her were. So that is the most sort of extreme version I've ever seen written.
I mean, I've had women, in fact more than once, have said to me, if I had a knife in my hand, I would kill my husband. There are times that I feel so awful. And I get that. You know, even I had symptoms for a few years and I didn't care if I was shouting at my husband. I love him dearly, but at times I just thought, I really don't care. He can walk out. I don't need him. And of course I need him. But it's like you've got this demon in your head telling you that you can be really angry and cross. But it's quite frightening. And actually it's very frightening when these women actually think about suicide themselves. You know, I had someone came to my clinic a few weeks ago and she'd been sectioned straight after having her ovaries removed. She phoned her husband from the recovery rooms and said, something's happened, I'm really scared about myself. And she then tried to kill herself by banging her head against the wall and was sectioned and kept saying to the psychiatrist, I think something's missing, I think it's my hormones. They said, no, I think you've got an acute psychosis, you're depressed, you need to have heavy duty drugs. And it went on for about 6 months, and then one of her children actually read about me on my Instagram and messaged me and said, I'm really worried about my mother. And so obviously I saw her as an emergency, and she's already improving on her own hormones, unsurprisingly.
The Aural Apothecary is sponsored by Jamie Hayes Executive Coaching and OneLessPill.com.
Well, I think even though we're we're three men of a certain age, I think we could probably still talk about this for quite a lot longer. But I think in the interests of the rest of the podcast, it has been absolutely fascinating. But as you might be aware when you've perhaps listened to some of the podcasts, we like to ask all of our guests a couple of things. And so the first one is we're very interested in a desert island drug, which is something that evokes a very powerful memory for you. So not something that you take to a desert island because it will save people's lives. Would you like to offer us up your desert island drug? And I'm not going to take any guesses what it might be.
Well, I'd quite like to say testosterone, if that's all right. Am I allowed to?
Yeah, of course you can, yeah.
I thought everyone would say estrogen, but actually...
Because everyone was guessing estrogen.
Yeah, I know. I thought I'd catch you out. Do you know what? And if I'd met you 6 years ago, I would have said estrogen. But actually, testosterone, we produce as women 3 times more testosterone than estrogen. It's a really powerful hormone, and it's been neglected for so long. And actually, personally, I take testosterone, and if I didn't, I would have given up my job as a doctor. There's no doubt about it. It's really good for mood, energy, concentration, stamina. It's just people all say it's just that sense of well-being comes back, that sense of self-worth, of just being happy, actually. And there's also evidence that it reduces risk of osteoporosis, heart disease, and probably dementia as well. So it's very important, but it's not thought about, is it, for women?
I listened to your podcast with Dr. Jeff Foster, actually, about I don't know, can we say the menopause? Does that exist?
Well, he doesn't like that term, but yes, certainly testosterone deficiency in men is, and I've done a lot of work with the British Society of Sexual Medicine, where Professor Mike Kirby, who you might know, has spoken about the benefits of testosterone in men, and I've just talked about benefits of hormones in women, testosterone and estrogen. And it's very similar, but it doesn't affect all men, as you know, as it's probably about a third of men have low testosterone.
Your latest episode, Louise, is on testosterone as well, isn't it? So that's worth a listen for all our listeners as well.
Yes, I've done one with the most amazing Professor Isaac Monyanda, and I've got one coming up in a couple of weeks with one of my colleagues, Dr. Zoe Hodson, again talking about testosterone. We're trying to make a noise because I think it's important that women know about it, but we're also really hoping that it becomes licensed for women soon, because as you know, it's not licensed for women anywhere in the world other than Australia at the minute.
So he mentioned foggy brain, better sleep, better energy and better libido as his take-home messages for your listeners.
But it's not part of any mainstay guidance, is it? I'm out the loop on this, but...
Yeah, it's some nice guidance. So nice menopause guidance from 2015 say that if a woman has estrogen replacement, so has HRT and still has reduced sexual desire, then you can consider testosterone. And it's also mentioned in the International Menopause Society guidelines, yeah.
But there's no licensed product at the minute, is there?
No, but as you know, we prescribe lots of things off licence. If you think of all the things we prescribe for children and things like amitriptyline for migraines, for example, it's prescribed off licence. So.
I was struck, though, by Dr. Jeff Foster, but he being very clear about not using it in men anyway, if it didn't meet the strict criteria.
Yeah, I think it's different somehow in men. There are, and I'm sure you've seen, I've certainly seen, there's lots of private clinics that give testosterone to people who, want to bodybuild or, haven't got low levels. It's very different in women. Women who are menopausal will have low testosterone levels. So we give it in really safe doses and monitor their levels so they're always within female ranges. So.
Okay, well, we'll definitely accept testosterone as your desert island drug into the Aural Apothecary formulary, as we like to call it. What about a song then? So we like to think of an anthem that might mean something to you.
Yeah, this is a bit awkward actually, because my oldest daughter's a musician. She plays the trombone and she's just gone to the Royal Academy of Music and she listens to things all the time. My husband's really into music and I've just got one of these brains that just listens to music because I like it, but I can't remember anything. So I was thinking hard about this actually, and so I decided, this is a bit geeky, so you might laugh at this, the Toccata and Fugue in D minor by Bach. And I tell you why. is that I used to play the organ, and I went to boarding school from very young. Actually, I was only 10 when I went to boarding school because my dad died when I was 9, and I was sent off to a really horrible, strict boarding school. And I learnt to play the piano, and then I learnt to play the organ. Not particularly well, but this is one piece of music that I really, really wanted to learn. So I learnt it, and I played it once in assembly, and it's the most amazing feeling of power when you're playing the organ. But actually, you can't make a mistake, because if you do, you can't hide it. With the piano, it just fades very quickly. You can't. And it just makes me think, it makes me very happy when I listen to it, because it is a very uplifting piece of music. But I also, when I'm thinking about what I'm doing with the menopause and my career, any little mistake I make is amplified. And, you know, you all give me all these lovely compliments, and I don't want to tell you the number of people that write, email, phone me and complain about what I'm doing, the horrible things that have happened to me over the last few years. And, you know, the more I sort of get out there in the public domain, the number one thing is I'm a clinical professional person, and my clinical integrity is really important to me. And then this piece of music makes me think, oh, Louise, if you get one small thing wrong, they won't remember the beauty of the music, they'll just remember that note played wrong. So yeah, so I don't know whether that's a bit awkward or geeky, but it just made me think.
That's almost as powerful as that piece of music itself, because I also love that piece of music.
Oh, good.
You cannot miss it if you hear it in a church. It's unbelievable, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's the emotion we're after, Louise.
Yeah, very much.
Oh, good.
You've nailed it. Okay, so we've got your Desert Island Drug, we've got your career anthem, so no pressure. But we're also looking for something for the Aural Apothecary Library. Would you like to offer anything to listeners in regard to this?
Yeah, of course. So this is where estrogen comes in. So a book called Estrogen Matters by someone called Avram Blooming. I don't know if you know of him. He's a professor of oncology from the University of California in America. And about 3 years ago, I was presenting something at the Royal Society of Medicine, actually, and it was about patient choice, which is very pertinent for your podcast, of course. He was talking about HRT for people that have had breast cancer. It was actually, the whole day was about breast cancer, so there were different parts. And he was talking about his own experience. So his wife had estrogen positive breast cancer, his daughter had estrogen positive breast cancer, and they'd both chosen to take HRT. And I thought, oh right, that's a bit risky, isn't it? And he'd written this book about how estrogen matters and how important estrogen is for our future health as well as us to function. And it's written for anybody, but it is very heavily referenced, so it's very scientific as well. It's the most amazing book. And once I listened to him, I thought, gosh, you're telling me all the things that this is incredible, actually. This is all the things that I've been thinking about the last 20 years. And then he talks about how little evidence there is that estrogen actually causes breast cancer. And estrogen, as you probably know, used to be a treatment for breast cancer, and it can induce apoptosis. So actually, there is some studies that giving estrogen to women who've had breast cancer, they do better. So it's an incredible book, and it's done very well for him. But I really feel that every woman and probably every healthcare professional should read it. He's got the most amazing brain. He's really clever. I've listened to him talk a lot, and I've invited him to talk to our doctors recently. And the other thing that he recently said was, do you know what, Louise, I'm not there to be their doctor, I'm there to be a patient's advocate. And I think that's a really great word, isn't it? Because I think, gone are paternalistic days where we just give people the green piece of paper and go, off you go. It really is being their advocate and making our patients being listened to, enabling them to be listened to. So I've learned a lot from him as a mentor, but I think his book is just brilliant.
So it's Estrogen Matters by Avram Blooming. Have I got that right?
Avram Blooming, yeah, AVRUM and then BLUMING, Avram Blooming, yeah.
Okay, excellent. Well, we'll definitely accept that.
Oh, good. I'm doing well. That's good.
We'll accept that.
What? We accept everything.
We do.
It's a personal choice. It's about personal choice.
This isn't room 101, Steve.
Our micro discussion next. Is STC as you as well?
So yes, a micro discussion for the first episode of Series 3. We thought we'd try and make it meaningful and edgy. And so you may or may not be aware that there was a consultation that's now closed in England only, as Jamie said. It's already free for prescriptions in Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland. This was about whether the upper age exemption should change so that it's in line with the state pension. So we don't want to get, we will stray into some form of politics, I'm sure. But this was purposefully about, should it move from the age of 60 to 66, in line with the state pension. It just sparked, I suppose, a thought process around that. Let's have a debate about prescription charges, because, you know, they contribute about £600 million. I'm reading now from the document that was quite intense that came with it, that most people probably didn't read, but it contributes about £600 million in revenue, which I suppose is not a huge amount really. And they were saying that actually if the government went with what they think is their preferred option, which is phase it in like everything else. So in other words, if you're 61 now, it won't affect you, but everybody that's going to be 66, it will be phased in, and that it would raise about 174 million